Are you all hydrated, Ali?
I am, thank you.
Or prepared to be hydrated? Don't do what I do, which is like do some gesture while I'm giving a talk and knock a glass of water over.
Oh God, don't say that. I'll try very hard not to do that.
Hence, I have one of these like child-proof caps on my desk. So. Yeah.
We're getting a few more now, Elizabeth. So just maybe one more minute and then we're good to go, if that's okay.
That sounds fine. Yeah. So, Ali, how's the weather where you are? Is it raining today?
Actually, I'm in Norfolk today, which is the other side of the country. It's 4.5 hours from where I live.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it is at home, but we have had rain here today in Norfolk, and they're very excited because they haven't had any rain for 20 days and they were desperate for it. So yeah, so anyway.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I guess we're a bit north of you in Lincoln, if I have my geography right. I'm still learning. So but it rained here a bit this morning and it's still a bit cloudy. So I don't know. Anyway, just looking at the website from Stocks Farm, it looks gorgeous. So.
Oh, it is beautiful. We're very lucky, actually.
Yeah.
Very, very lucky. We farm in a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I see you do farm visits, so maybe we'll have to plan a trip. So.
Yeah, you must come.
Yeah. All right. Good. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thanks everyone for joining. We have the special pleasure today of having Ali Capper from the National Farmers Union joining us for the CDT seminar today. And I'm going to introduce Ali in a minute, but I want to start with a few announcements that April has asked me to cover. First of all, we're still recruiting for the next academic year, so starting in October 2022. So if you have any friends or even enemies that you would like to interest in joining the CDT, please follow the website that's listed on the screen, lower upper left corner of the screen probably, so take a look at that. There is a activity called Drink Outside the Box, which is being organized by CDT students Rupika, Caroline, and Harry. So if you're interested in finding out what that's all about, please contact them. We're also looking for people who can help with showing some demonstrations as part of the CDT conference, which is coming up towards the end of June, in just about a month from now, the 22nd and 23rd of June. So please contact Rob Lloyd if you are able to help with that. So I think that wraps up the announcements. If there's anything else, I'll cover it at the end. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Ali, and she's going to give us a talk for about 40 minutes. And then we have a panelist of some CDT students who will help ask some questions. And if people have questions for Ali, please feel free to put things in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat during the talk. So Ali is a partner at Stocks Farm in Suckley, Worcestershire, which she runs with her husband and father-in-law. They specialize in growing hops and apples. They farm dessert and cider apples as well as hops. Ali had a former career in advertising and marketing. And in addition to her current roles working on the farm, she also is a member of the board of the Oxford Farming Conference, Y Fruit Limited, the British Hop Association, and she's chairman of the UK's NFU's National Horticulture and Potatoes Board, British Apples and Pears Limited, and Y Hops Limited. So Ali is a busy woman. She's a Nuffield Scholar and a non-executive director of NFU Mutual. So I'm really delighted to welcome Ali here. And Ali, you're going to share your screen with slides. So I'm just going to hand over to you. I will give you a 5-minute warning if you're starting to run overtime, but otherwise, please take it away.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to try sharing my screen now. Hopefully, I'm going to make this work correctly.
Yep, that looks fine.
Get this onto slide mode. There we go. And I need to go back to the beginning. Hold on a second. Don't know how to do that, so just give me a second here. There we go. I haven't done this for a while because we've been back to doing face-to-face meetings. I've forgotten how to do a Zoom share, which is actually quite nice because I spent 18 months on Zoom and I got quite fed up with it. Good afternoon, everyone. I do sometimes wonder why I get myself involved in talks like this, because I'm very humbled to have been asked to do this, but I do think it's really important, and we were talking about it this morning actually. It's really important that farmers and the academic community connect more, because we speak different languages, and I think it's really important that we spend more time in the same room together so that we can learn each other's languages and make more of a connection. That conversation was going on this morning. I'm actually in Norfolk, not at home, because as part of the Oxford Farming Conference, of which I'm a director, we're in Norfolk today and tomorrow. And this morning we were at the John Innes Centre talking to the genetic scientists there about some of the challenges facing arable farming. And we were just talking about how we get that connection going between the academics and the farming community. And it's a tough nut to crack. But anyway, this is my contribution towards trying to do that. So I thought I'd give you the farmer's perspective. So what's the challenge? And I did put this, I think this has gone out. I think farmers feel, the industry feels, that not enough research is disseminated into the hands of growers. And that's, quite a big challenge. We talk about knowledge exchange, but I think it's more than just knowledge exchange. It's more than the outcome of a piece of research being presented to farmers or being disseminated via a conference or a booklet or a leaflet. It is about conversations. It's about getting underneath the skin and lifting the lid on the difficult things. So dissemination is a big word, and it doesn't just mean somebody standing up and presenting at a conference, in my opinion. We really need to create more of a conversation. What that means, of course, is that not enough research is then adopted at farm level. So really, I think one of my challenges is to work out how we change that and how we make sure that research is as relevant as it needs to be, and that we speed up the adoption of it into and onto farms and growing businesses. So just moving on, just a bit of why do I think that's happening? It's so varied, the reasons. It feels that the control is more in the hands of academics, although I do think the government is trying to fix that with the new funding streams that are coming down from Innovate UK, where they're very much wanting businesses and farms to be the lead in those, although that's difficult because we're not used to going through those application processes. Still, and this is a funding issue, there's still far too much money going into what I call the pure science and not enough into the applied science, because it's only when you get the applied money that you actually start to then bring things down, bring good ideas down onto farm. And sometimes you do need funding to do that. You can't just take a great outcome from a piece of research and make it happen on farm. There's usually a series of trials and often tribulations that one goes through to actually take a good idea and a good outcome from research and really make it happen in your business. So for me as a farmer, I think it's access to the brains and the funds. And it's also, I think when you think about farming generally, it's about making sure that in the research results, we are giving farmers the confidence that they should be implementing these results on their farms. And what does that mean? Well, it isn't just about, so for example, here's the answer to this pest, here's a great predator, that you need to introduce, and you do it like this, because actually farmers are running businesses. So what they also need to know is, are there risks associated with that? How do they overcome those risks? And fundamentally, what will the payback be? Is this investment in this new technology, is it going to create new unintended consequences and risks in my business? And actually, will that investment pay back? And how quickly will it pay back? So lots of challenges. And I think often the commercial aspect, that payback piece, is forgotten when we're thinking about how farmers apply great research into their farm businesses. I'm going to just try and bring us to life. So this is Stocks Farm. You can find us online, stocksfarm.net. We are a family farming partnership. Why am I telling you about that? Why is a family farming partnership an important statement in a presentation like this? It's important because 95% of all food produced in the world, primary production, is produced on family farms. So despite the fact that there are some corporate businesses involved in global farming, that actually isn't where the majority of food is produced. This is our partnership. So my father-in-law in the top left-hand corner, Mark, he will be 84 this year. So is he actively involved in the farm every day? No, he's not. He's having quite a nice life now. He's taking things much easier, but he is still, his brain is still very good, and he's still very actively involved in understanding farm policy and where that's taking us, understanding the new agricultural transition programme and where that's taking us, and very much wanting to understand where Richard and I are trying to take the business. And the amazing Richard, my wonderful husband, is in the middle of the screen. And I am a farmer's daughter, so I'm from a farming background. As Elizabeth mentioned, I had an 18-year career in London in advertising and marketing, and then I married a farming business. I married a farmer, which is how I've got involved. And I wasn't going to get involved at all, but it sucks you in. Any family business tends to suck you in, but farming in particular. So that's how I got involved in our farming business. And we farm with a great team at home. So on this screen, we've got from left to right, George and Steve and John. Steve's been with us for 32 years, John for 15, and George for 7. So really long-standing members of the business. We're very reliant on a lot of harvest seasonal labour as well. So our number would go up to about 70 during harvest. And that labour often comes in from all parts of the world now. We've got a strong contingent from Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. Ukraine is very important to us, although I'm not sure that many of the guys that were with us last year will be able to come back to us this year, sadly. And actually we had some Russian folk on our farm last year as well. And I don't think they are going to be allowed to come back either, not by their own government. It's the Ukrainian government of stopping, obviously, men coming because they want them to stay and fight in the war. But in the case of Russia, it's our government that won't let the Russian people that want to come and work in our industry come. So it's, yeah, the Ukraine war and Russian war, horticultural growers in the UK have got lots of stories like mine where employees that were with them last year won't be back this year. And in fact, one of our chaps did come back from the Ukraine in February, and when the war broke out on the 24th, he went home the following week to fight. And I know lots of stories like that around our industry. So the people in our business are really important. We grow hops. I didn't want to assume that anybody knew what hops look like. I'm not being rude or patronising, but it's a very niche crop. It's a very tall crop, grows to about, as you can see in the picture in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, grows to about 18 foot, 6 meters high. It is only the flower, on the right-hand side, you can see the leaf and the flower. It's only the flower that the brewer wants. That's where all the magic is. That's where all the flavour is, where the bitterness is. Why were hops first introduced to beer? Because they had a preservative value. It wasn't for their flavour, although that's what it's become all about now. And the picture of the hands, that's important. Those are dried hops, and that's what the brewer is buying. And Actually, that set of hands is one of our guys, but that is what brewers do. They pick up the hops when they receive them, and they rub and they sniff. They rub them to release the oils, and they sniff and they look at them, and they buy and judge hops on the rub and the sniff. So the quality of our hops is really, really important, because if we don't deliver great quality hops to the market, the brewer won't come back and buy them a second time. And I'm very proud to say that we win awards. This year, we won gold for Jester, Olicana and Harlequin. These were international awards. These hops are grown in lots of different countries as well as the UK, and Richard won all 3 prizes, which was amazing. So quality is a really important part of what we do. And we grow apples. We grow dessert apples, eating apples. They're all picked by a hand. Again, you'll see that hand in the middle of the screen is really important. And this is one of our biggest challenges, which I'll come on to. We plant, so in the bottom left and the bottom right of the screen, that's a new orchard going in. We plant very tight, straight rows of trees using GPS. So we've got systems that are subject to the connectivity, subject to rural connections, do sometimes go wrong. It means that we can plant trees very quickly and in very nice straight rows. And today we don't plant orchards where we've got trees dotted about a field. If that's in your mind, take that out of your mind. We are growing fruit walls. So we are growing a tree which won't get to more than about 3 meters tall, and they are planted about 1 meter apart, and then supported by a post and wirework framework. And what we're trying to do is grow as much fruit as we can. What we're trying to present to our teams, whether they're pruning or thinning or picking, we're trying to present a wall of fruit. We're not growing fresh air, we're not growing wood, we're not growing leaf. All of those things are important, but what we're trying to grow and present is a wall of fruit. And I think the picture in the top left demonstrates that quite well. We're award winners on the farm for our apples as well. And in fact, we won an Innovations Award in the spring of this year from the West Midlands Top Fruit Discussion Group, snappily titled. But the Innovation Award was for what we're doing from a biodiversity point of view within our new orchard systems. So I just showed you on the previous slide the bare earth. That's when the trees are first planted. So we've got a choice then. Bare soil, we don't want bare soil. We don't really want weeds either, because they compete with the trees for nutrients and water. Traditionally, we've planted grass alleyways. What we plant now, in 2 out of every 3 rows, are wildflowers. And that is fantastic to create biodiversity, which does a number of things. Obviously, that colour, this orchard is in blossom. I took this photo just a couple of weeks ago. So that colour is amazing, because as well as the beautiful blossom that you can see on the trees behind, all that colour is really giving every reason for the pollinators. And it isn't just bees, it's all sorts of insects, but bees are very important, and particular solitary bees, but it's giving them a signal, a colour. That means food, and that means come into my orchard and pollinate my orchard, please. And we work with the local beekeepers, and we've got 4 local beekeepers that we're working with now, where the bees are managed by the beekeepers, but the hives are in our orchards. And so those wildflowers are really important to help with pollination, but they are also really important because throughout the summer and the autumn, they are a source of food for those pollinators, so that we're not just a 1-minute wonder with our blossom and then there's no food for them. I know this is working because the beekeepers are now leaving their beehives with us all year. They don't want to take them elsewhere in the autumn and the winter. So that's definitely working. So very proud of that Innovations Award. I just thought I'd show you quickly a bit about our supply chain. So we send all of our fruit into a business called YFruit in Ledbury. It's a member-owned pack house. It's got 48 controlled atmosphere fruit stores where the fruit can be stored for up to 12 months. What does that mean? Well, they're very big fridges, basically. And we put whole bins of fruit, 200, 400 bins into a store, and we close the door and we control the atmosphere. We take the oxygen out, and what that does is it holds the fruit. So there's nothing weird or wacky or dangerous about what we're doing. When we open that store up, the fruit is coming out exactly as it was when it went in. So long as it was perfect when it went in, it'll be perfect when it comes out. How is fruit graded? How is it checked for skin finish, for colour, for size? All of those things are very important. We've got very clear specifications. It's checked over a grader. I'm going to show you another picture in a minute. There are very few people grading fruit these days in pack houses, probably only a couple of people managing the whole grading operation. And then at YFruit, we've got all sorts of packing lines and heat seal machines and pallet strapping machines and all the rest of it. This is what the grader looks like. So I'll just go back to the previous slide. There are cameras. So the fruit goes up and underneath a bank of cameras, and there are more round to the left-hand side. And as they go underneath those cameras, the cameras do a number of things. They check for internal bruising, external bruising, skin finish, size, and each individual fruit is also weighed. And then according to the size band, it then decides which channel to send the fruit down. And we grade into either 3 or 5 millimeter size bands. This is all quite technical, but it's just important for you to understand the supply chain. If we put the wrong size fruit in the wrong pack, that's a rejection and that's a fine from the supermarket. If it's the wrong size fruit, it's within the specification, but we're putting too much, we call it giveaway in the pack. That just costs me an awful lot of money if I put too much weight in the pack and give it away without the retailer paying for it. So this is very important part of our supply chain to get right, and it's very automated. As you can see, there aren't many people, but there's a lot of activity going on here, and what we really need to do is automate our end, the farm end. We sell to both Tesco and Co-op, and again I just thought it would be useful for you to see the packs. It's always slightly frustrating because there's never enough Union Jacks on these packs for my money, and that means that when the consumer goes into the supermarket, they're often not sure whether what they're buying is British or not, which is obviously soul destroying for us because it's really important. Provenance is very, very important, and it's very important that the packaging and the design cues on the packaging give people a very clear clue as to what they're buying. I thought I'd just focus on food waste for a minute, because I think this is really important and something that's, I think, very important for everybody involved in the science of food to understand. Over a third of all food produced in the world goes to waste. I just think that's a staggering statistic, and it's one that we've all got a duty to fix. Why? Well, often the weather. As an apple grower, when you're growing a crop outside, if you get too much rain, the fruit can go too big. If you have a really terrible growing year where you have a lot of cold weather, where the fruit doesn't mature properly, perhaps it's very dry, then the fruit can be too small. And then you can have problems where the fruit is hailed or frosted. If you get frost at blossom time, you literally, either the blossom doesn't pollinate, or if the little fruitlets have started to form, the frost will just make them drop off. So there's all sorts of risk associated with growing an outdoor crop. Then there's, of course, pest and disease, and this can create food waste as well. If a pest or a disease takes hold in a crop, very often that whole crop will go to waste, because consumers won't buy fruit that is marked or with holes or blemishes. We all buy with our eyes, and if there's something there that looks a bit dodgy, we will pick up the alternative fruit that looks beautiful and clean. Are supermarket specifications seeking too perfect? Yes, they are, in my opinion. But certainly in the UK, our retailers are incredibly agile and incredibly organised. We've got one of the most efficient supply chains in the world in the UK. It helps being on a small island. That makes it very efficient. But it does mean that they can choose to be very fussy. We also have an issue sometimes with supermarkets over-ordering or under-ordering, and that makes it very difficult for us to manage both the farm piece, but also the pack house piece. And then in the home, there is a lot of waste in the home because fruit or vegetables are poorly stored, or because whoever is in charge of the cooking in the home is not planning properly, or over judicious use of what I call sell by and use by dates. I don't really understand why there is a sell by date on an apple. You can tell by cutting it or biting into it whether it's okay or not. And with all food, I would say smell it first. And that's the mantra in our house. But again, those are all reasons why we have this food waste. So I'm going to touch on farm profitability. Earlier, I talked about payback. So if I want to take a great outcome from a piece of research, I'm not just interested in whether it's a great outcome. I'm interested in whether it is going to help me commercially as a business. And we focus a lot on profit. And I think there are a large swathes of the UK population, and certainly government, who think profit is a dirty word. I'm afraid running a business I don't profit's really important. It's important because without making, if I'm not making a profit, I don't have a business that is flourishing. And if I haven't got a business that's flourishing and growing, then I'm not creating jobs and I'm not paying wages. But if I'm not making a profit, I can't reinvest in my business. And if I can't reinvest in my business, I'm not creating new innovation. I'm not investing in new technology. I'm not investing in new tastes, new flavors, new ideas. And I'm also not thinking about the nutritional value of the fruit or vegetables, if I were a vegetable grower that I'm growing. And nutrition is a really important part of our choice when we plant a new crop. So all of these are reasons why businesses need to make a profit, which is leading me neatly into the whole innovation space. So just thinking about apples for a minute, and the same is true of hops, probably the greatest innovations, certainly in my lifetime, have come from the development of new varieties. And I've just put one up on screen here just to sort of give you a sense of how much of a deal breaker a new variety can be. Gala is the #1 eating apple in the UK. It's a lovely apple. It was developed in New Zealand, where they also have a maritime climate, but they are warmer in the summer and they're colder in the winter. Cold winters are important for fruit growers because that's when you get vernalization. That's when the tree shuts down properly and the cold weather kills or suppresses disease. Hot summers are important and sunshine hours are important because that gives you the maturity of the fruit, but it also delivers colour to the fruit. And so when new clones come along, when we invest in developing new clones of Gala, on the right here, you'll see Gala Schneeko. Gala is characteristic by its slight stripe on the skin, as you can see here. And this clone is a very nice clone. It's got nice red coloration. The supermarket is looking for 50% red. And actually, if I turned that apple over, the other side would look like that. And this apple, which is looking pretty green, if I turn that over, it would be red on the other side. So that would meet the supermarket specification. But look at this one. So this is just, we've got a couple of trial trees of Gala Big Bucks. That's not a typo. It was developed in South Africa and that's what they named it in South Africa. But look, it's red all over. And it's not just red, it's dark red. So that's really exciting from an apple grower's point of view. Why? Labour is one of our biggest costs. I'll come on and explain that in a minute. When I'm growing a variety like Schneeko or some of the older clones, the colour comes gradually in an orchard. So generally I will send in a team to pick a first pick and they'll leave behind on the tree the greener fruit. And then we'll come back a week or 10 days later for a second pick when that fruit is coloured up. But if all of my orchards look like Gala Big Bucks on the left, I am only going to have to do a single pick in that orchard. And that will save significant money. So it will make me more productive. And that's really important. I just thought it was worth looking at productivity gains. This is a British apple and pear slide. In 1990, we were growing apples and pears across nearly 12,000 hectares, and in 2020, that had fallen to 6,000. But look at the production in terms of the tonnage that we are growing. So we are now growing 201,000 tonnes, higher than the 179,000 tonnes off half the acreage. So that's pretty impressive. And we've also increased our production as a percentage of supply from 29% to 39%. So we're growing our market share. So that's also very good news. How have we done that? Well, we've gone from this. Look at these trees. They're miles apart, aren't they? They're meters apart. And so we've gone from that to this growing system, which I described earlier, the fruit wall system. So we're producing much more fruit from much less land, but we're also presenting a much more efficient system to the pickers. This system over here, you either need platforms or ladders to get in to pick all of that crop, so it's slower, so far less productive. So our biggest challenge is the labour challenge, and I just thought I'd give you sort of a bit of an overview on why this is such a big deal for the industry. Again, this is a slide from British Apples and Pears. Is my bar on your screens, I wonder? What this headline says is hourly labour cost, it's increased by 63%. That's based on circa 30 hours of labour per tonne. It's such a short amount of time, it's only 9 years, our cost per hour for labour, and this is the base cost, and we all pay more than this, but this is the benchmark. It's gone from £7.57 an hour to £12.32. That's an incredible increase in a very short space of time, driven primarily by the introduction of the national living wage. And what that has meant is that the percentage of labour that is labour cost, which is of your turnover as a business, has gone from just 24% in 2013. It's now nearly 40%. So the labour bill in my business is now 40% of all of my costs, which is just an extraordinary number. It's huge. This year, British Apples and Pears believes that the year-on-year cost of production increase is going to be close to 20 to 25%. So we're all hearing about the cost of living crisis. We're all hearing about the high energy costs. But the other thing that's happened for us in our sector is that the government have introduced a new pay rate for the seasonal workers scheme, which brings our labour in. So the national living wage for the whole country, so for everybody in the UK, is £9.50 an hour. But if you're coming in to pick fruit and veg, you're actually going to earn £10.10 an hour. I don't really understand the rationale for why the government's done this. They say it's to stop the seasonal workers scheme being a cheap labour route. I don't understand that, because to me, the national living wage prevents that happening. That's the whole purpose of the national living wage. But what that's delivered for us on a year-on-year basis is a 15% increase in our labour rate. That's comparing last year's national living wage of £8.91 with this year's rate of £10.10, and adding in the new national insurance increase of 1.5%. So altogether, it's 15% versus last year. There are all sorts of issues that are also driving inflation. We don't have enough people coming in. We've got a visa issue at the moment because of the war. The visas aren't being processed fast enough. So we've got an availability issue. Obviously, this is seasonal work, doesn't suit the indigenous population of any economy, actually, because the work is not there all the time. And then we've got the inflation that's being brought to bear by the fuel and energy crisis, which was already there, but the war has exacerbated it. So we're facing between 50 and 300% increase in energy costs, which when you have a crop like apples, which you're storing for 12 months in cold store, that is also very significant. So that's where the previous slides, 20 to 25% cost of production increase, well, just in 1 year. So if you hear commentators in the news talking about food prices, we heard the Bank of England earlier this week talk about apocalyptic food price increases. And this is why, because our costs are going through the roof. What are we doing about it? Renewable energy is a really important part of it. This is a pack house in Kent, this is Gotham's. Don't think there's much more of their roof they can cover in solar panels. So they're doing a brilliant job to use as much renewable energy as possible to keep their apples cold in cold store. Every pack house in the country has invested in solar energy. But the real challenge is the automation challenge. I'm really sorry, I don't know how to get rid of this bar at the top. Oh, like that, maybe. I can only do that. So the real challenge is labour, and we need to automate more. Now, if I went back just 10 years ago, the apples on the right would have been picked similarly to how they are now, but it wouldn't have been we call this a bin train. There would have been apples binned out. So the crates, the wooden crates, we call them bins, would have just been put in the orchard at intervals. This bin train makes it much more efficient because the bins move with the people. And on the left-hand side, we've got a platform here that allows us to pick safely at height, and health and safety is really important. That platform was worth about £40,000. So what we need to do is go from that. What looks like it's going to happen this year is that growers are moving to this. So look, we have the big difference for the pickers. I'll just go back to the previous slide. Can you see that the pickers have got these, we call them bins, round their shoulders, and they're picking into the bins, and then they very gently release this into the wooden crate here, but they're carrying that weight around the orchard with them until the bin in front of them is full, and then they empty it into the wooden crate. This system allows them to pick straight from the tree onto an automated arm that goes up and fills the wooden crate. So that's very efficient. That's a bit more automation. But of course, where we all want to get to is this. Where we all want to get to is a system where there still will be people, but where the fruit is being picked. And I know that many of you are working on this challenge, but it is a very, very big challenge. Will we get there in 7 to 10 years? I've been talking about seasonal labour since 2012, and I've been saying since 2012 that robotic picking is about 10 years away. We're at 10 years because it's now 2022, and I'm still saying 7 to 10 years now, before I think we'll really see it at commercial scale in an orchard anywhere in the world. But the challenge is, because of all that inflation that I've talked about, especially this last year, 15% year-on-year inflation in wages, we need the robots now, and we need an agility to the robotic development, and we need, thank you very much, 5 minutes, that's lovely, I'm nearly there. And we need collaboration to solve the problem together. And there's lots of other challenges that as businesses we're going to have to get our heads around. Will we be making the capital investment in the robots? And if so, what's the payback? Remember that word. Or will I be renting the robots? And if I'm renting the robots, who's insuring them? Because there's public footpaths running through my farm. And if they run over a member of the public, or God forbid, somebody's dog, who's liable for that? It's my land, so it's me. But if I don't own the robot and I'm not insuring the robot, that's really complex. So there's a lot of stuff to sort out. So I can stop there, Elizabeth. I'm just going to flick so you know what's here. And if there's anybody on the call that wants me to delve a bit deeper into this, I have got crop protection. I can talk about crop protection and some of the pest and disease problems that we face, because I thought you'd be interested, predators that we're introducing. I can talk about biodiversity, and I can talk about climate change and the impact on farming. And I can talk about all the other things that I do. But I'll just go back to that thank you slide, because I felt that was a good place to stop, and then let the conversation guide you to where else you might want to take me.
Thanks, Ali. That's amazing. And it feels like we need to invite you for a second follow-up to cover all the things that you are like flashing through, because I think any of those would be interesting to hear about. And I imagine many of our listeners would also be interested to hear. So
shall I stop sharing to make the conversation easier?
Yeah, I'm going to bring up our panelists, and while people are turning their cameras on, so some of the research that I do is looked into labor costs, and I may pick up with you separately on that. But I did a quick analysis of the figures that you had on the labor costs. I think one thing to sort of point out, because you look at what was the pound worth in 2013 versus 2022, and so I compared the change in Big Mac index and your labor costs, and basically the rise of the labor cost is twice as much as the Big Mac index change over that time. So that really helps emphasize how staggering that cost is for for the growers. So so let's see, panelists, do you guys each want to introduce yourselves quickly to Ali, and then let you go ahead with questions. So Rachel, do you want to start?
Yeah, hi, Ali. Thank you for a good talk. It's good to hear from someone who cares that it hasn't rained for 20 days. I think that is. So I'm one of the AgriFoRwArdS CDT students. I'm just finished my first year doing a master's at Lincoln. I was wondering, maybe we need to work on this together as the two different worlds. But I was wondering, if we were able to get over these obstacles and get to the kind of the brave new world that you'd like to see, what kind of structures and organizations do you think are going to be doing these or developing these technologies? Are you looking for a lot of new startups coming through, or do you think it's going to be farmers investing in robots themselves, or is that still an open question from your point of view?
I think there's a number of different things happening. Farmers are investing. I'm one of the other Oxford Farming Conference directors who's here with me in Norfolk is Marion Reagan from Hilo Farms, and she is invested in Dogtooth. And her business is doing a lot of the trialing. It's a high risk investment because that business, whilst we will get there with robots, that business might not succeed for any 100 reasons. But why is she doing it? She's doing it. It's a bit the same as new variety development. You make a certain amount of investment in this stuff all the time as a business, because otherwise you're on the back foot. If you are there on the front foot, you do have that opportunity to make the gain, if you like, on everybody else. But what structures and what organizations is a really good question. The most important thing is more collaborative. So the people who are trying to solve the problems need to work more closely with the people with the problems, more regularly, more interaction, more conversation. I was lucky enough actually to host some students. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. I know that it was COVID, because I know I wasn't allowed to feed the students, but actually almost nobody had actually been out onto a farm and got their boots dirty. And that is where we just need more of that. So I think the answer to the question about what structures and organizations is more collaborative structures and organizations.
Cool, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Rachel. Over to Gary.
So thank you. Echo Rachel's comments. So thanks for the fantastic talk today. I think it's building on what you've previously said around the structures. So you presented many examples of efficiency improvements and process improvements that you're making, talking about fruit walls, the pack houses, obviously. So there seems to be improvements in the process, but it seems to be stuck at the farm level. There seems to be something that's not taking place with regards to how the process is improved. But then you also presented ideas of automated arms and so on and so forth. So that there looks to be as well things that are taking place. So is it investment, or a lack of will of making investments, or the risk? I'd just be interested in more of your idea around how to actually get this stuff going on, because there does seem to be, you presented some solutions. So I was surprised that those solutions hadn't been adopted as widely as maybe some of the other parts of the supply chain.
So again, really good question. Let's just take the robotic arm. Let's just take that robotic picker, because it's the panacea. You know, if we can crack an arm that can pick a strawberry or an apple or even asparagus, that's even harder actually, that would be amazing. And there are some solutions out there, and the videos on YouTube look amazing and they make me want to buy them straight away, but of course they're all nicely edited because they're still all quite slow. And they work really well in the lab where the lighting levels are even, but it's, of course, as soon as you get out onto my slightly uneven, slightly even sometimes muddy farm, with varying light levels and different weather that you have to contend with. And we don't pick apples in the pouring rain because they bruise, but if we're up against a picking window and we just get a shower, we would keep picking. The problem is that it's really difficult. The task that we're asking, the robotic challenge in terms of picking fruit and vegetables, it's so hard. Because what we're trying to do is replicate, I've talked about the dual manual dexterity of my pickers. They don't just pick with one hand, they pick with two. And when they're picking, they're not just picking, they are grading. So they are, we give them picking rings actually for apples. So it's literally a circle, and anything that drops through the little one is too small and we don't want. And anything that won't go through the big one, so they have to, the big one is too big and we don't want that either because it's outside specification. So they need their picking wings for the first day or so. It's a bit like artificial intelligence. Then they get their eye in. They don't need their picking wings anymore because they just know by feel and look. But they're also selecting colour, skin finish. So they're grading in the field. And that's really hard to ask of a robot in varying light levels and on a surface which is not flat and smooth. So the task is really hard. Will we adapt our growing systems? We already are. There's a lot of two-dimensional growing system trials going on to try and make it easier. Would it be easier if we put all this growing inside a box? Yeah, it doesn't sit very comfortably with me though, especially in a country where we've got enough natural light to grow crops successfully, enough heat, and most importantly, enough water falls on our island. It doesn't always fall in the right place. We do need a water infrastructure project, and don't get me started because I'd like to see an HS2 for water infrastructure. But if we put all of that fruit growing in a box and we had to introduce the heat and the light and the water, we will be expending an awful lot of energy. I'm not convinced. I think if you are in a very hot country where you haven't got enough water, there is a place for it. And if you're in a very cold country where you don't have enough sunshine, there is a place for it. But I'm not sure in our country it's the right solution. So it makes the roboticization of outdoor growing systems tough, it's hard. And what's important, if we think in global terms, is actually all of the big fruit crops that we eat are grown outdoors. Bananas, oranges, kiwi, soft fruit, apples, pears, they're all outdoor crops. Even soft fruit, I mean, I know we put it under a polytunnel, but it's still an outdoor crop, still grown in a field. I just think it would be slightly mad to try and put all of that in a box, personally. So it makes the robotic challenge really difficult. I guess slightly also to answer your question, what else is stuck? Is there enough, I would ask a question back, is there enough collaboration between the scientists, or are they all having to compete with each other for funding? Could we be solving, in my head, could we be solving these problems quicker and faster if there are 40 people in the UK, 40 robotic scientists in the UK trying to solve this challenge? If I just put them all in a room together for 6 months, would it happen faster?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but I suspect it would. It feels natural that something would take place. But do you feel there's like you mentioned something about capex and capital expenditure and risk and the research relevant and posting risk? Is there a way of you? Can you talk a little bit more about how would somebody doing research at a low sort of technology readiness level sort of identify capital at that point of their research?
I think by working with a farmer actually. So I think there are with a business. I think there are there's quite a lot of challenges with the robotic piece. I was just going to go back actually and show you. Let's just go back and show this slide. That one. So I think I mentioned a minute ago, this picking platform on the left is about £40,000. But for us, the progression before that, what we used to have was a tractor with a driver and a trailer with a platform on the back. So I'd got a tractor and a man and effectively this platform. So by moving to this £40,000 platform that drives itself, it can actually drive itself down the orchard, but can be driven. You can see the little steering wheel at the top there. I could stand down a tractor and a man. So that was giving me payback, if that makes sense. The progression to this machine is about £80,000. But I think this machine will probably take out 25%, maybe more, of the labour needed to pick with this system. And that's where your payback comes in. So it's working with businesses that can help you work out what's the scale of the investment, and then is the investment one where I'm making a purchase, and the examples I'm giving you here are a purchase, or is it a rental model? And I'm sure I've given you the challenge of insurance. I'm sure we can overcome that. But it's working out which model and then what the charge rate is, and then how does that compare to my expensive labour? Because remember, my labour isn't just picking; it's also grading. The last time I looked at the speed of the current apple picking robots, they were picking at about 1 apple a minute. Our teams will pick on this system at a rate of about 15 apples a minute, and they're grading them. I think on this system, they probably will be picking at perhaps double that. And it's those sorts of metrics that really matter then when the robots come along as to whether we can make it make sense within the commercial environment that we're dealing with. That's a really long answer to your question. Has it answered your question?
Yeah, thank you. It's lots of insight, so thank you for that.
Great, thanks, Gary. And our last student panelist, Shumin, do you have any questions for Ali?
Hello, Ali.
Hi.
Thank you for your talking. It's a really big change in my views, because when you use apples farm, it's very different with my country. Yeah. So a quick questions. So for the UK, all areas is suitable for the growing apple tree, or just for the west area?
I didn't quite catch that. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I mean, for the UK, the country, only the west part is suitable for the growing apple tree, or all areas can be suitable for the growing apple tree.
Are you asking me where in the UK is suitable for growing apples? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are two areas in the UK. One is in the southeast, and it's predominantly the county of Kent.
Okay.
And the other is in the west. It's about an hour south of Birmingham. Herefordshire and Worcestershire, both counties, are big fruit growing areas. So you've got this pocket, Herefordshire, Worcestershire and Kent. You also have some fruit growing areas in Suffolk, Essex, little bit in Essex, little bit in Norfolk. So you've got a sort of east, southeast and a west. And the reason why those areas in particular is quality of the soil. And both areas have got quite a nice little, we call it a microclimate. So our area, Herefordshire and Worcestershire, we're between the Brecon Beacons and the Malvern Hills. And that means that we get nice rainfall. Kent, sometimes called the Garden of Kent, obviously from Worcestershire, I would say, and also Worcestershire. But Kent, being closer to the sea, has less cold weather in the spring, so can be more successful at pollination because it's near the sea. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So do you know for the UK, if the apples just the product from the UK farmland, is it enough for the supply for the whole countries, or the UK still need to some apples from other countries?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about market share. So can we grow all the apples that we need that consumers want to buy in the UK? So the answer is we don't at the moment. Today, we supply about 40% of all apples sold in British supermarkets are British, 40%. What could that number be? Do we have the potential to grow more? Yes, we do have the land, that's the first thing. And we do have the ability. So traditionally, if I went back 25 years ago, we didn't, because we couldn't grow apples that would store for 12 months. But today we can. Today we can grow Gala and it will store for 12 months. Today we can grow Red Prince, Tsunami, Magic Star. There's a couple of others, sorry, I can't remember, but and they will all store for 12 months. And that's why we have the ability, I think, to probably get to 70 or 80%.
Okay.
Great, thank you. I'm just conscious of the time, so I think I'm going to have to put a stop to questions. Feel free to put some follow-up questions in the chat, and we can follow up with Ali offline. But I'd like to take a moment for everybody to please thank Ali for joining us today. Just a quick announcement about our seminar next month. I think April has a quick slide you want to put up. Well, it's not showing fully on my screen. Okay, so next month we have Professor Megan Povey from University of Leeds, who is going to talk about something I can't see on my screen. But
shall I help? It's food reassurance, sustainability, robotics, and sensors.
Perfect. Thank you, Ali. So we look forward to seeing everybody next month, and thank you again for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Ali.
Thanks, Ali.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.